Hey guys, what is going on? Inception here and welcome to another video. Today we are going to be talking about hidden traits in the game that some of you guys may know about, some of you guys may not know about. It's traits that actually make a difference on the cards in FIFA, but people don't really look at them too often. So some of the traits are very noticeable in the game, and then some of the traits you don't actually know exactly what they do. And this is a thing where EA should definitely, explain to us what these specific traits do to each of the players, right? If you play the game enough, you'll actually realize what traits actually make a difference on the players, right? Because as you're playing, you can kind of feel those traits with those players, right? So we're going to look into all the traits. There's a website that I use called WeFoot. WeFoot has the player database in general of all the traits that are in the game, right? So again, we're going to be looking into the traits and we're going to be talking about what traits make a difference and what traits I don't really know what they do, but some of you guys can guess it because this is the traits are basically guesses from us, right? Because EA don't actually have never actually explained what the traits actually do. But again, it's more down to if you play the game enough, you can kind of understand what the traits do. So we're gonna look into some of these traits. First one is avoids using the weaker foot. So this is something that you will definitely notice with your players. If you guys have ever used a Prime Maradona's card, I'm gonna actually open up his stats right now. Did not mean to do the zoom in like that. My bad. One of the wrong hotkeys. If you look at Prime Maradona's card, right? His card has that trait, and it's very noticeable that he has that trait. Players like Maradona will avoid using their weaker foot because that's like a characteristic that they used to have in real life. And I'm on Foothead right now, and I should be on Footbin because their website, the way that the things are formatted, are a little bit better. So on Maradona's card, he does actually have that trait where he avoids the weaker foot. And if you actually use him in the game, he does actually avoid using that weak foot as much as he possibly can. When he dribbles, he tends to dribble more with his left foot. Even though he does have a 3-star weak foot, you will still notice that he does avoid that strong foot, right? I think a player like Salah might also have that characteristic as well because, and I've never checked this before, but he feels like he does. So if I check out his traits, so he doesn't actually have it, but that might be because he has a 2-star weak foot. But with Maradona's card, like I said, you'll actually notice it a lot with the shooting, right? So you'll still be able to take driven shots with his right foot if you want to take a driven shot with his right foot, but you'll tend to notice that he'll try to shoot it as much as he possibly can with his left, right? So if there's somewhat of a little bit of an angle where it's possible for him to shoot his left foot, he will still try to shoot with his left foot. So other traits we have here is backs into player. I have never seen this trait on any of the cards as I reviewed them. I've reviewed a lot of cards in this game, so I'm not sure if this is even in the database for traits, even on Footbin, because I've never seen this trait used. Because these traits are really important for EA to actually put in the game, because traits are important for you to set up your instructions and tactics to the best of your ability. Because if you have a striker that actually says backs into player, that means that if you tell him to be a target man as a striker, then he'll do that very effectively because he actually has that as a trait. Whereas someone like Ronaldo, who may or may not have a backs into player trait, he may not actually do it as well as other players. Because the thing is about these traits, right, is that just because a player doesn't have these traits doesn't mean they can't do it. It just means that it's more effective when they do actually have the trait. A perfect example of that is the finesse shot trait. People who have a finesse shot trait take the shot in a more specific manner than someone who doesn't have the finesse shot trait. And it's very, very noticeable in game. And we're going to get into that later in the video because it's probably one of the traits down below. But backs into player, I'm not really sure. I'm not really sure if that's even on the database for any of the players because I've yet to see that once. I'm actually going to search up Harry Kane's card to see if he actually has it on Footbin, and he doesn't have it on Footbin. He has shooting and long shot. So that might be a trait in previous FIFAs, but I've yet to see that one in this FIFA. I've even checked on Footbin, Footwiz, and Foothead, and I've yet to see that trait on an actual player. The chip shot trait is a very noticeable trait as well, but it's very I wouldn't say that it's insignificant, but it is more consistent when someone does have a chip shot trait. So this is just an opinion, right? Because this is something that I mention to people all the time. I'm not exactly sure that if someone has a chip shot trait, if the goalie reacts a certain way to that chip shot trait, or if someone has that chip shot trait, whether or not they take it more effectively, right? Because there's actually this mechanic in FIFA that you may or may not know about. It's basically before you're about to chip the shot, it's better to hold the left bumper or the L1 command on your controller for 2 seconds, 1 or 2 seconds before you actually chip the ball, right? And then after those 1 or 2 seconds, you would hit the chip, and it actually hits the ball into the back of the net more consistently and in a more fluid manner. So I wonder if a player has a chip shot trait, if they do that more consistently when you do that specific mechanic, right? Because all players can do the chip shot from that specific game mechanic. That chip shot mechanic where you hold LB and then tap and then chip the ball afterwards is very effective, right? But I wonder if someone like Messi, who I'm almost certain has the chip shot trait because he's done so many in real life, he does have the chip shot trait. I wonder if he just does that more consistently. So it is probably noticeable because I have also noticed. Here's the thing, right? I don't know if Roberto Firmino has a chip shot trait, but when I use him on the PlayStation account, he was very good at doing them. So let me just check his card just to see if he does have it. He does actually have the chip shot trait. And the reason why I'm saying that his shots were really good doing the chip shot was because there were specific games where I would do it in a very awkward angle and he would still put it over the goalkeeper because the goalie would dive in and then he would just chip it right over them. So again, it's something that's kind of noticeable in the game because they just tend to do it really, really smoothly, right? Corner specialist, I'm not entirely too sure what corner specialist does. The prediction of it would be maybe they can do a more powerful cross into the box. Maybe it doesn't even require that much power and they still hit it with great accuracy. So there's not really a way of knowing exactly what the corner specialist does because I don't think using different tactics on a corner really matters from which player you're taking it with, but maybe there would be a difference in terms of whether or not someone who's taking the corner would either be more direct and with more power and pace on the ball, or if it's a player that might do more floaters into the box, right? So someone like Di Maria, for instance, in real life, he takes like really great, or not Di Maria, the perfect example is Douglas Costa. In real life, Douglas Costa has a bullet of a cross, right? Now, I wonder if that is what works with the corner specialist. So that is more of a prediction in terms of whether or not a player will do that really well. Same thing goes for the next trait, which is crosser and early crosser. So crosser, again, I wonder if that comes down to accuracy or whether or not they put the ball more in with pace, right? So I'm going to actually search up Douglas Costa's card. And I want to see if he has that as a trait on Footbin. So on Footbin, Douglas Costa actually doesn't have this trait. So I'm going to go ahead and check on FootWiz as well, just to make sure that he doesn't have any traits. Because I'm actually curious to see why he doesn't have any traits at all. And again, this could be a hidden trait because in real life, Douglas Costa hits absolutely banging crosses into the box. So his traits are avoids using weak for... I'm actually going to use FootWiz because FootWiz actually has this as a trait. I'm actually going to check out Harry Kane's card from earlier to see if he has like the back into player trait or something. So I'm going to check out his Team of the Year card. His Team of the Year card only has shooting and long shot taker. But Douglas Costa's inform card has avoid using weaker foot, flair, shooting, long shot taker, dribbler, and speed dribbler. So he doesn't have this trait of crosser or early crosser, but it could be a thing in game. We don't know, right? But in real life, if you guys watch Juve play, he's really, really direct with hitting those powerful crosses. So I wonder if that's what it actually does. Now, dives into tackles. I'm not sure if dives into tackles. Oh, that's interesting. On Wii Foot, it actually... This is actually really interesting. On Wii Foot, it actually... it's if you put a trait on... Oh, that's interesting. So someone who has backs into player as a trait are players like Zlatan Ibrahimovic, Robin van Persie, Frank Ribery, Marlos, Nabil Fekir, Marco Royce, those guys have that as a trait. That's interesting because it's funny because I've reviewed a Royce once and I don't remember ever seeing him actually have that trait. So I'm actually gonna check this on Footbin. On Footbin, he does have it as a trait. So that's actually very interesting. And that would be a very beneficial thing. That actually might make it so as players like Zlatan Ibrahimovic are actually more effective. It's funny because Lukaku is a player that should definitely have that because he's definitely a target man type of striker who is a player who really does back into defenders. So that's actually a very interesting trait. On Wii Foot, you can actually pick a trait and it just takes it off. So people who have crosser and early crosser are players like Kevin De Bruyne, Dani Alves, Ricardo Rodriguez. That's interesting if Kevin De Bruyne has it because Kevin De Bruyne has bullets for crosses. So he actually might be really good at doing them in general. The same thing with Ricardo Pereira from FC Porto. He also has it. Ashley Young also has it. Very surprised that Douglas Costa doesn't have it, but it's very interesting. I didn't know that they actually had this. So the people who have the corner specialists, again, players like Kevin De Bruyne, Paulo Dybala, Alessandro Del Piero. Interesting. So this is actually way better that I can actually check this. So let's see the ones that I want to check. So avoids using weaker foot. Diego Maradona, Paulo Dybala, David Silva. David Silva definitely avoids using his weaker foot, but he's still he avoids it, but he's actually very good at shooting with his weaker foot in real life. I don't know if you guys have seen him play in real life, but he's actually pretty decent at shooting with his weak foot. So I think he actually has a 2-star weak foot, which just shouldn't be the case because he's actually really good at taking shots with it. Gareth Bale makes sense. Matt Hummels makes sense. Anything else we see here? Arjen Robben obviously avoids using weaker foot. So that's interesting. So that's actually good for the remainder of the video because we can actually check to see which traits affect which players and whether or not it's noticeable on the cards. So the other ones dives into tackles. I want to see this one. So Sergio Ramos, this is actually really interesting now that I see the cards. Sergio Ramos has dives into tackles. That actually makes a lot of sense because he's a fantastic center back to use. And I'm looking at his Team of the Year version of his card too, and he's really, really good in this game. Marcel Desailly has dives into tackles. The reason why I think dives into tackles is a very good trait to have is because defensive AI is really, really effective in FIFA. Ever since the last gameplay patch, it makes a huge difference on the players. So looking at it right now, it kind of makes sense because even Paulo Maldini also has it. Arturo Vidal, I never really noticed it with Arturo Vidal, even though, you know, it would definitely be helpful, especially in the midfield area. Kamil Glick, I never really used these guys. Pep never used. Socrates is very good as a center back in FIFA as well. So that could actually make sense in terms of dives into tackles. So, but is it noticeable from me? I've never noticed dives into tackles, but it's kind of interesting that they give it to center backs that I actually do like Sergio Ramos and Paolo Maldini, right? So on to the next ones. We have dribbler and speed dribbler. This is very, very generic, right? So what makes dribbler and speed dribbler very relevant in FIFA is when you're running with a player, it's being able to cut left and right while you're still running with them. Dribbling is when you're not holding our trigger. This is what you notice in the game. Dribbler is when you're not holding right trigger. It's the responsiveness of a player moving left, right, down, up, whatever direction you want to go. If you've ever used players like Lionel Messi, Ronaldo, or Neymar in this game, you will 100% notice that when you're using the left stick with them, depending on your gameplay, they really smoothly move to each direction without having to use LTRT. LTRT dribbling is basically L2R2 on the PlayStation. It's basically this close control technical dribbler. That's the trait that makes that more effective. It doesn't make it impossible for someone that doesn't have that trait, but it just makes it better when someone does have that trait. If you guys have ever used Neymar, Ronaldo, or Messi, these guys move left and right with the technical dribbler, or not technical dribbler, but when they're running or when they're dribbling with the ball, without you using LTRT, they are very good at moving with the ball. So that's a very generic one. Players like Mohamed Salah, Neymar, Ruud Gullit has it. Lothar Matthäus has it. That's with running, right? So you have to be careful running or just using the left stick. And it's very noticeable on these cards, absolutely. Flair trait. So the Flair trait's a very obvious one. The Flair trait, what it is basically... it's essentially like when you, I think this is the case. I think if you have the Flair trait, I can't remember if doing the Rabona is off of having the Flair trait or if it's off of having a 5-star skill. It might be a 5-star skills because Sergio Ramos is one of the players listed for this trait, which isn't even listed right now, so I'm not really sure what's going on. Oh, I didn't even list it yet. So Flair trait. Okay, Sergio Ramos is not here. So Flair trait, let's see, from players that I've used. Cristiano Ronaldo, Neymar, Diego Maradona, Sergio Aguero. Okay, so I've never tried doing a fake Rabona with Sergio Aguero or Neymar. Or no, Neymar definitely, because he has 5-star skills. I've tried it with him. But I think there's definitely a chance that if you have the Flair trait, you could do the fake Rabona. But if it's not the case, then it's definitely only off of doing flare shots, flare passes. It's basically when you hold L trigger or L2 and you press A and they do that fancy flick pass or whatever it is, right? It's very noticeable when you're using the players like Cristiano Ronaldo. Paul Pogba, I'm almost certain has it as well because he always does it. Yeah, but I am curious to see if the flare trait is what makes a fake Rabona effective or if it's just 5-star skills. I'm almost certain it's only 5-star skill players, but I'm not going to guarantee that because I'm not 100% sure. The giant throw-in, a very, very generic one. Players who can just take giant throw-ins. Players that can do it are Luis Hernandez from Malaga, Gulam from Napoli, and Michael Antonio from West Ham. This is actually interesting because I'm thinking of one player, and I'm pretty sure that he used to play. It was either in Stoke City. It was either in Stoke City or something. It was a center back. I don't know if it was Shawcross or if it was somebody else. This was like years ago. I would say like 4 or 5 years ago. It might have been Christian Fuchs actually from Leicester. Because I'm looking at the players right now. Maxi Pereira does it all the time in real life, so that kind of makes sense. But there was one player from Stoke City that used to do it all the time. I can't remember who it was. Maybe you guys can answer in the comment section down below of who it was, because I honestly don't remember. But this is a very generic one. Most players can't do that insane giant throw-in, right? Like, because they have like this setup, like they go all the way back and then they throw it in, right? But a player who has giant throw-in, they're pretty much just going to be on the same spot and they're just going to throw it into the box or throw it into wherever it is you want to throw it to. But it's a little bit underwhelming that there's only like 3 or so players that can do this. Gulam, the top 3 is basically Gulam, Luis Hernandez, and Michael Antonio from West Ham that can do these as an actual trait. So next up here we have the goalkeeper one-on-one. Now, the goalkeeper one-on-one, honestly, I don't really know what the goalkeeper one-on-one would actually equate to, right? If you actually search up on the website, nobody actually pops up for the goalkeeper one-on-one. So it probably isn't even in the database for Ultimate Team in general because it just wouldn't really make much sense. Because in all honesty, the only goalkeeper trait that truly matters is that leg save trait. And we're going to get into that later on as well. Injury prone. Injury prone is an interesting one, okay? I'm not sure in Ultimate Team if injury prone is a thing that anyone wants to have in FIFA, right? So Kaká has injury prone, Gareth Bale has injury prone, Marco Reus has injury prone, Arjen Robben has injury prone, Bastian Schweinsteiger has injury prone. Now, my situation with this is this shouldn't be a trait in Ultimate Team, right? Having an injury prone card in your team in general should just never be a thing. I think it's really stupid that your players can get injured in Ultimate Team. We already have to deal with contracts and fitness, and having to deal with a thing that's actually a trait in the game is a little bit annoying. So, yeah, not the greatest traits. That's something you definitely don't want in your for your player to have. Okay, so this one is a very interesting one, right? And I wish there was more of an elaboration with this one, right? Leadership trait. I have zero idea what leadership trait does, right? And I think it's the same thing with everybody. Like, what does the leadership trait actually do? If someone has the leadership trait, do you give them captaincy and your team just all of a sudden just is more compact and they're more organized? We don't actually know, because the players who usually tend to have leadership are the god tier players, right? Like the prime versions of Lothar Matthäus, Maldini, Carlos Puyol, Pele, Leonardo Bonucci, Sergio Ramos, right? So I'm curious because I wonder if this trait actually makes the entirety of your team play more balanced or just play better in general? We don't actually know, right? So leadership is just like a cloud in the air that just floats. Nobody really knows what that does, right? The next one we have here is the long throw or the long thrower. I guess that one kind of makes sense from, I guess it's like when you're how long you hold A, essentially, because there's two traits. There's long throw and then there's long thrower. So long thrower is not a thing. Like no player is under that, but there's long throw as a trait. I think long throw is not the giant throw. It's not like, oh my god, let me back all the way up and then throw it in. I think it's, I'm just going to stay on the spot, but I'll be able to throw the ball at a pretty good distance, right? Because players who usually take the throw-ins, Roberto Carlos, Gareth Bale, Jerome Boateng, Azpilicueta, like these guys, if you ever play with them in the game, they do end up taking some pretty nice throw-ins in general. It just feels less flimsy, right? If you want to pass it at a medium or far distance, right? So that's what that trait would do. One club player, God knows what one club player actually does in this game. The players who have it in this game are Lionel Messi, some center back from CSKA Moscow called Berezutski, and a couple of dudes from the MLS, or one dude from the MLS and then one dude from St. Petersburg. So again, God knows what one club player does, but Lionel Messi has it as a trait. Is that influential in the game? It might be, right? Who's not to say that if someone is a one club player, if the play literally revolves around them? We don't know. Do they do things in the game? Some of them I feel like they do, but something like this, it kind of almost seems like irrelevant for it to be a trait, right? But it's very down to the wire specific with who they actually choose to have this specific trait. So it would be interesting to know if there would be any difference in that. We have the trait of passing and long passer. So I'm assuming that if someone normally has really good passing stats, they'll just be good at passing the ball in general. And I hope to God that Matt Hummels has it. He does actually have it. And Bonucci also has it as well. So players like Luka Modric, Kevin De Bruyne, Andrea Pirlo, Paul Pogba, Wayne Rooney, they all have this trait. So it probably means that their passes are just more consistent and more crisp, right? More accurate, all those kind of things. It also might mean that if your player is on a weird angle, like let's just say he's facing this way, but he wants to pass it that way, maybe he'll be able to do it without actually having to take the extra touch, because for you to have that pass to be more consistent, if you're facing this direction and you want to pass it in that direction, you kind of have to turn your body or do that small little intricate touch downwards and then pass the ball for it to be more accurate. But maybe if you actually have this as a trait, it might mean that you can just pass the ball from here all the way there and for it to be accurate. You might even be able to do turnaround passes with frequency, because I've noticed Kevin De Bruyne can do turnaround passes really, really well and definitely noticeable. Next trait is playmaker. Again, God knows what playmaker does, right? We don't know if playmaker and passing and long passing go hand in hand with each other. We have no idea. But players who have playmaker are Ronaldinho, Lionel Messi, Pele, Diego Maradona, Luka Modric, Eden Hazard. Like, a lot of different players have it. Do we know exactly what it does? Not really. Like, I wonder if the attacking play revolves around whoever has the ball. Like, if Messi has the ball, I wonder if players make specific runs because Messi has the ball, right? It's very hard to say, because the thing about FIFA is that things contradict each other. I'm going to use the word contradict because weird people say it's not the right word. Long throw, like agility and balance and sprint speed acceleration go together, right? If your agility and balance is poor, then your acceleration and sprint speed needs to make up for that poor agility and balance. But sometimes it can't, right? So that's the thing with FIFA. We don't know what playmaker does, right? So that one's a very interesting one. Power header as a trait. Power header is incredibly noticeable in this game, right? If you've ever tried to hit the ball in the air with someone like Patrick Vieira or Zlatan Ibrahimovic or even Sergio Ramos, because I use the regular Sergio Ramos, they just have bullet headers, right? And it's very, very noticeable. Someone like Ruud Gullit would actually be really nice to have as one of your attackers in like a 4-2-3-1 as like a left cam or a right cam, because if you do that, right, and you want to cross it far post, if someone has like Jordi Alba as a fullback, those crosses will be very, very effective to use, right? So, and again, guys, this is all guesses based off of playing the game. This power header is very, very noticeable with these players. It's incredibly noticeable with these players, especially Sergio Ramos, because I've actually used Sergio Ramos a lot, and I've used that Patrick Vieira in draft sometimes, and it's definitely very noticeable. Puncher is not a trait in FIFA. It is listed as a trait. I guess it used to be a trait back in the day, but then like Puncher might not have been the best thing to have as a trait. It must have been like really, really annoying. So we have the trait of pushes up for corners, yet another trait that I guess has been removed from players. Goalkeepers no longer push up for corners. I've played FIFA for such a long time, and I'm not sure if you guys feel the same way about this, but I have yet to pull my goalkeeper out of his box to my own box for a corner. I don't know if the game does that by default or if they just do that, if that's like a command you actually have to press. I feel like there is actually a command, but I just don't know what it is, right? So that's an interesting one. This one is interesting too. So these are the types of traits that they actually give to players, but God knows what they actually do. The selfish trait. There's a selfish trait that they actually give to specific players. Filippo Inzaghi, Mauro Icardi, Arjen Robben, Isco, Marko Arnautovic, Brahimi. God knows what that actually does to the player. Nobody knows, right? Shooting chip shot. We were explaining it earlier. Players with the chip shot trait just take it more consistently. This is actually interesting because it goes hand in hand. Oh, this is actually a very interesting thing. The shooting and the finesse shot is one trait. So if your player has shooting, and finesse shot as one trait together, right? It's not separate, it's together. I think that's what makes the long range finesse shots with players like Lionel Messi, Diego Maradona. I think even Salah has it. Yes, Salah does have it. Eden Hazard's very good at doing it. I also think that Prime Ronaldinho was good at it, because when I took shots with him, he always took it with that like good power, and he does have it too. I can see it right now. So that's actually a very interesting one. It's both as a trait together. There's also the trait with shooting and long shot taker, which again, Lionel Messi has those traits. Coutinho has a long shot taker with shooting finesse shot, so Coutinho might be a god at taking those long range shots as well. So that's actually interesting. There's shooting chip shot, shooting finesse shot, and then shooting long shot takers. So all of those three are separate, but they all have shooting in it. So maybe that finesse shot trait, as I explained so many times in previous videos, that finesse shot trait with shooting being together is what makes those long range finesse shots really good. Preferably if your player is at a 90-degree angle, or if it's slightly like maybe in like an 85, 84, maybe an 80, right? So that they can take those banging finesse shots. So that's actually really interesting. Sweeper keeper is a trait by itself, but I think that, okay, so this is an interesting one. I think the reason, right, that they took out sweeper keeper is because, you guys remember, I think it might have been 2 or 3 years ago when your goalies would push out of the box without you even telling them to push out of the box. I think they actually removed that as a trait so that they gave more power to the player to decide, because it was really stupid when, I think it might have been 2 or 3 years ago, where it was just really dumb that if you had like Neuer or something, Neuer would just like push out of his box without you even telling him to do anything. So that one was definitely a very interesting one. And I think the reason why no players have that is because of those days where people just complained about it nonstop of how stupid it actually was. Takes finesse style free kicks. I can tell you with the utmost certainty that I'm pretty sure Yaya Toure has this trait. I'm actually going to check to see the specific cards right now. Yaya Toure's rating. I can't even remember what Yaya Toure's rating in. Let's see here. Next. Man City. Yeah, Yaya Toure does have it. So basically the finesse style free kick is actually not ideal to have, because when you have the finesse style free kicks, the free kicks are more accurate. That's 100% the case. If you want to have fun with free kicks, they're going to be more accurate with the takes finesse style free kicks. But if you want to use that free kick tutorial where you have a player run over the ball that we have on the YouTube channel and he goes through and the other player doesn't know how to defend it, because it's very easy to defend against. You have to just choose someone from the wall, take the guy out of the wall, block that running space. You'll be able to defend against it very easily, right? But this finesse style free kick, it takes more time because they do this little run up to the ball before they take it. So that actually wastes time to be able to do that free kick mechanic where someone just runs over the ball. So that's definitely something that would be very helpful to have in FIFA for you to know whether or not they're good or bad. Takes powerful driven free kicks. I feel like Ronaldo probably has this. Yeah. So Ronaldo has the takes powerful driven free kicks. The only reason why I would say that even Roberto Carlos has it too, that's very obvious, is because in previous installments of FIFA, so 2 or 3 years ago, there was this free kick tactic where, if not tactic, but it was just a free kick, it was a way of scoring a free kick where you would just slide your left thumbstick to the left side, and then you would just hold LB, take a power shot free kick, and then Ronaldo, you can literally bang it in every time if you practice enough. That's how good and effective it actually was. Target forward, I think target forward is for your typical Romelu Lukaku, Zlatan Ibrahimovic, Hernan Crespo, Alan Shearer, those guys who are basically going to be your target man and the types of players that you're going to want to cross the ball into, essentially, right? So this is actually an interesting one, right? Because target forward is a trait, but there's also the trait that we were mentioning earlier of pushes into player. And I'm going to look for that right now. Pushes up for corner, selfish. No, it was one of the earlier ones. Backs into player. So the ones who actually have backs into player and the one we just mentioned, target forward, is players that are like the relevant ones are Zlatan Ibrahimovic and Marouane Fellaini, right? So these guys are the types of dudes that are really good in the air, right? So if you cross the ball into them, they'll be solid in the air to put the ball into the back of the net. But the thing about these cards, right, is that I don't cross the ball that often, right? So because I don't cross the ball that often, I don't necessarily notice those things. I notice the power header traits because of the defenders, right? When you're using Paolo Maldini, Sergio Ramos, if someone crosses the ball, and you're going to clear that out. But I've never used Zlatan Ibrahimovic or Marouane Fellaini to, you know, basically score a goal by heading it into the back of the net. So I personally have never noticed it, but for those of you who have ever used these guys, they're probably incredible to have in the box. But I wonder how it works with target forward and pushes into player, how they work together with someone like Zlatan Ibrahimovic. Because by itself with target forward, right? Again, the players I listed up before are the types of players that have it, but they don't have pushes into player. But I always thought that a target forward would already do that. So it's a very interesting topic to talk about for sure. But again, I think these players, the main focal point of it is basically to do a driven pass to them and for them to lay it off to someone else. So someone like Ibrahimovic will be an absolute god at doing something like that, right? So because he actually does have good passing stats as well. The next trait we have here is technical dribbler. So technical dribbler is a very noticeable trait. This is basically when you're using LT-RT dribbling or L2-R2 dribbling to be able to cut really quickly while you're dribbling. So going left, down, up, right, controlling the ball basically with the side of your foot, essentially, right? So if you control the ball with the side of your foot, you'll be able to cut into a certain space, and then if you want, you can accelerate into space while doing those actual things. So technical dribbler is very noticeable. Your typical players who have it are players like Pele, Maradona, Prime Ronaldo, Luka Modric, Neymar, Sergio Aguero, Ronaldinho. Like, these are the types of guys that have it. I'm very confused because I might actually have one of the traits marked off as well. No, I don't. I'm confused because Messi doesn't have technical dribbler, but I guess he's very good at doing it because of his regular dribbling stats in general. Because to be fair, I don't really LT-RT with Messi that much. I actually use the left stick more often with him because it actually seems more responsive. So that actually does make a lot of sense. But I was almost certain that he had it. So I'm actually going to check Footbin just to make sure that he doesn't, because he does seem like he's good at dribbling that way, but he actually doesn't have it. So it might be because his dribbling stats are already really good, and he also has the dribbler's trait by itself. So that could be a big reason as to why that trait isn't added onto someone like Lionel Messi. Tries to defeat defensive line, so tries to beat the defensive line, excuse me, is a very, very noticeable trait. This is basically the runs that your players make in behind the defense. So if you have your instructions unbalanced, so you don't have them to get in behind or press the back line, they will play more to the characteristics of their traits, which is to try to beat the defensive line more often than not. If you tell them to get in behind, then they're going to do it very often. So they're going to run away from you a lot, but they will be able to get in behind the play, right? So tries to defeat the defensive line will do that. If you tell a player to get in behind and press the back line, they'll do it. They won't run in behind as often because they're going to be pressing the back line to stay on side. Excuse me. They're going to press the back line to stay on side as much as they possibly can, but they're still going to try to defeat that defensive line afterwards. So there's still a chance that your players could get offside afterwards. The next trait is Ultimate Professional. Again, God knows what Ultimate Professional does in your players. Ultimate Professional is given to, as far as I can see right here, to basically all the icons, players like Vincent Kompany, Marek Hamsik, but I don't get it if you give someone Ultimate Professional and the leadership trait, because I'm actually going to search up who actually has that. So the leadership trait, the players who have the leadership trait and that trait is all the legends, not all the legends, but Laurent Blanc, Cam, Alessandro Del Piero, Javier Zanetti, Paolo Maldini, Nesta, those types of guys. Vincent Kompany, Claudio Marchisio, Jordan Henderson. So again, I don't know what that does. Like, if you give them the captaincy role, do they make the whole team play better? We don't know. If you give the captaincy role to an attacker, do they move around the pitch better? If you give a captaincy role to the defender, do they move around the pitch better? We have no idea, right? So those are the types of traits that are just basically guesses. That stuff that EA have never really explained to us. So that's pretty much it for the video today, guys. I hope you guys did enjoy it. Those are pretty much all the traits in FIFA that I saw from that website. So if there's any traits that it didn't mention to me, I do apologize for not mentioning them. There is also this other bracket called Specialities, and Specialities, God knows what they do. I don't know if Specialities comes from actually having higher stats, because traits is noticeable in the game. Specialities is an entirely different thing. I'm not sure if it actually does anything in the game, but the traits definitely do. Some may do something for traits and some may not. Like leadership and stuff, like I said, I don't know if those things actually do anything, but something like finesse shot traits, long shot taker, there's players who have good shooting stats, great long shot stats, but the way that they take the long shot just isn't as effective as someone who actually does have the trait, right? The best way to notice that is the power headers with players like Sergio Ramos and Maldini, and the finesse shot trait with players like Messi and Maradona. They take the most amazing finesse shots in general. So I hope you guys did enjoy this type of video in regards to traits. If you guys have like any other suggestions for any other types of videos that you guys would like to see, be sure to let me know in the comment section down below. I do apologize for missing out on a few prime icons that I didn't look into. The format of the websites, they don't really show the prime icons as is, or there might be a way to actually just search up just the prime icons. But on the websites, I have to kind of like skip a few because there's some that actually show. It's the way that it's formatted. So basically, like, there's some icons that are lower rated, but they're the prime version of their card. So it's just a little bit of a mix-up. So I do apologize for not reviewing most of the prime icons in the game. I saw a few comments recently in regards to my favoritisms towards players. And I tell this to people all the time, that the comparison in FIFA will always be made to players like Patrick Vieira, to players like Ronaldo, right? I'm not saying that certain characteristics of players aren't good to, like, if, let's just say, for instance, like Frank Rijkaard has poor agility and balance, right? I'm not saying that Frank Rijkaard's a poor player. In my videos, I mentioned that these could be things that may make you not like a player, but it's not a guarantee. These things are all my opinion. I feel like some people, when it comes to opinions on FIFA, some people take it to heart when it's just an opinion that I have towards a certain player. So I saw one comment of someone regarding the comparison between a prime Frank Rijkaard and a Bakayoko card, right? And obviously that comparison is going to be made in terms of what player is going to be good and what player is going to be bad. The thing is, though, is that a player like Timo Bakayoko costs 1,700 coins, whereas someone like a Prime Rijkaard card on the market costs 680k. So it's taking into consideration the price that you're paying for a player, because not everybody has 30 million coins to spend on FIFA. So there's going to be certain cards that there's going to be certain characteristics that you're going to notice that are really poor and really good. A player like Bakayoko, right, has 75 acceleration, 72 sprint speed with 66 and 62 balance. Yes, that is definitely the case. That's not the greatest to have, but that's very noticeable in the game. But if I'm paying 680k, I expect those four specific stats to be better for a prime version of the card. So that's the reason why I say that someone like Prime Rijkaard may or may not be good for you, right? Those stats may not have a big influence on you at all, but there's a reason why most people don't use that Prime Rijkaard card. My opinion on players comes from the opinion of, hey, you may want to use these players in FUT Champs. Some of these players are not usable because of specific stats, right? If you're paying another 680k for a card and those four stats aren't upgraded, you might as well just get someone like Laurent Blanc, who is an upgrade to someone like Timo Bakayoko, right? Who you're going to have in the CDM that has the pace, has the agility and stuff to move left and right smoothly for a CDM, right? It's just a comparison. I'm not saying that someone like Frank Rijkaard isn't a good card. I'm just saying that those specific stats may influence whether or not you'll like a card or dislike a card. I like a lot of cards in FIFA, but the stuff that are low in stats are noticeable. Like I said, those four stats with Bakayoko are very noticeable. I came to a point where I was like, I really need to get rid of Bakayoko because these stats are bothering me, right? It's very noticeable, but you can still have fun with most of the players in general. So I just found that comment to be a little bit irritating because I mention that all the time, that my opinion with players is my opinion, and these stats are very noticeable in the game. So that's pretty much going to conclude the video today, guys. I hope you guys did enjoy it. If you guys did enjoy it, please drop a thumbs up on it, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.